Some real bummer of a news dump regarding Vlatko Cancar. We'll talk about what that means for both him and the Nuggets. How long is Nikola Jokic going to be the best player in the world? Plus, as we continue our debates, Reggie Jackson versus Jalen Pickett. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen, being an everydayer, checking us out on the daily and making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys joining us on whatever platforms that you've chosen, whether you're on Apple Podcasts. Please leave us those five-star reviews. Take a second, just hit pause, give us a 5-star reviews. Do that now. Spotify or on YouTube, where you can join the show and join literally thousands of people that subscribe to our show now, which is really exciting. We've come a long way in a year of doing it, this show on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys being a part of the community. Hope you guys are off to a great week. As you're listening to this, you'll probably catching it on Monday. Recording this show Sunday night. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares, director of content for DNVR. On today's show, we'll talk about the injury to Vlatko Cancar in the FIBA World Cup. We'll talk about what that means for both him and the Nuggets. We will get to a little bit of a conversation about Nikola Jokic and how long he will be the best player in the world as he currently is. Plus, we continue our series where we take two players and kind of debate the ups and downs and picking between the two, as we'll do Reggie Jackson versus Jalen Pickett here in the third segment. Adam, hope your weekend was nice. Hope that everything's going well. How's your offseason treating you, buddy?
I'm refreshed, man. I feel good. I'm not ready for the season yet, so I'm going to keep enjoying this feeling refreshed, but I'm great, man.
Yeah, I'm ready for football season. That's what I'm ready for. I'm like knee-deep in prepping for everything for football. Excited for all the goings-on with Colorado, too. I'm excited for them to head back to I'm really excited that they're headed back to the Big 12, honestly. As somebody that grew up watching Big 12 football, I'm pretty excited. And basketball. I'm very excited for
Colorado. Is it the Big 12 though? Like, what is it now? It's returning.
Well, it can't just be the big, because there's another one. So I don't know. I'm
just saying it's returning to a unfamiliar home.
It's true. It's true. I wish we could get Nebraska back, because we really need that Colorado, Nebraska back in action. All right, let's start here. Vlatko Cancar suffers an ACL tear. Really bummer news. Vlatko suffers it with the Slovenian national team over the weekend. There's no there's no good thing here. Like, there's no upside. There's no, at least it's
just for the what though. It happened in an exhibition game. His second game was Slovenia, and it happened on an absolutely fantastic dunk.
Yeah.
I mean, he drives the lane. He takes one step inside the foul line. I mean, one big step inside, launches off, successfully dunks it, but it was through traffic. So he kind of gets knocked off balance. And honestly, you can't really see anything that happens. Nope. I mean, but he just lands weird and immediately grabs his knee. So ACL, and we know what that means. He's on a 1+1 contract. Likely this takes him out through the rest of that contract.
Yeah. Statue of Liberty dunk actually was what it looked like, and it was really impressive. But yeah, now he's out. It's a bummer for Vlatko, who had worked really hard, had just he had stuck through, right?
Right.
If I'll put it this way, when you're a guy in his position, if you are a pain in any regard, then you don't make it, because it's just you're not worth the hassle, right? Or you're thrown into whatever. And he had stuck around, and he was one of the longest tenured Nuggets, won a championship, and it's awesome that he got to be a champion with this team and to contribute. I had said that he had earned the minutes over Jeff Green. I've said that I disagree with the decision to go back to Jeff Green after Vlatko to earn those minutes. But this was the season with Jeff gone. It was okay, there's a little bit of runway here now for Vlatko to really cement himself into the rotation. He was going to be I've been saying this, there's just no experience on the bench. There's just nobody on that bench with any experience in the forward spot. You got DeAndre, he's not even a 40 game player at this point, let alone 82 and 16. He's not a half the season kind of guy. You've got Justin Holiday on the wing, and you've got Reggie Jackson at point guard, but you don't have any veteran depth. And he was, for him personally, we'll talk about what this means for Denver, but for him personally, this was a real opportunity to show that he belonged, to show that he was capable of expanding, that he could be a rotation guy. And it really sucks that this happened to a guy who has worked as hard as he has to carve out a role on an NBA team.
I mean, that part of it sucks. I don't like, we have to talk about what it means for the Nuggets now, just because that's what the show is about. But I don't want to sound callous in doing so. It sucks for him. And you're right that I agree with you that I thought he was a better option than Jeff Green last year. I'm happy for Jeff Green, especially Vlatko came on the DNVR show and talked about how much Jeff really wanted the championship. And it was something I don't think people quite realized, that it was something that the whole team knew was especially meaningful to him. So in one way, it was cool that Jeff got those minutes, but this definitely felt like the Zeke Vlatko year. But to me, once you move past that for Vlatko, and like I said, the team has him on a 1+1, which means this year he's on a contract. Next year, there was a team option. He won't recover this year. Like ACL injuries, only in the NFL do guys come back and that quickly from ACL somehow. But it's not going to happen this year, which means, and it probably, if we use just Jamal Murray's timeline, even by the start of camp next year, he probably would be, less than 100% or less than what he was a week ago. So Denver going into an offseason and having to decide whether to pick up that team option or not. I mean, honestly, am I wrong, Matt, in saying I probably wouldn't? It wouldn't make sense for them to pick him up as he's coming off of an injury on the final year of a deal?
Probably not, just unless you wanted to keep it. The only reason would be to keep it for salary purposes, right? In case somebody wanted to take a flyer on him and you can be able to throw him into a deal. It'd be the only real reason. And yeah, you don't know about the recovery time beyond a year, but I will say that players that have tried to come back early, I think it's really admirable, but it also hasn't worked out well. There's been a number of players. Kidder Perkins is one that has come back like extremely early from these ACL tears, and it's not good. Like their long-term prospects in the league suffer when you try and come back too early from it. Like the right approach is to wait until you're absolutely ready to go. We'll see kind of what that means for Vlatko. We'll cover it as it happens. For the Nuggets this year and in the immediate, look, I've said that I don't – go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's kind of big.
It is. I think it's much bigger than people realize. I think
I didn't realize it at first. Like the first day it happened, then as I was sitting and thinking like, all right, well, let's look at the depth chart. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know who plays now. I mean, default, Zeke Naji now has even less competition. You look at it and you say Zeke Naji has to perform this year. Like, because Vlatko and Zeke could play together. And I think that might have been the default setting. But more importantly, there was insurance there. Zeke wasn't playing well. You have Vlatko. Vlatko almost certainly is going to play well. He was, as your point, sort of more of a veteran type presence. You kind of knew what you were going to get from him. But now you take that out. You take Vlatko out. He's out for the year. And now you look at it. If any of Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, Jokic, or Zeke Naji get injured, what's your front court rotation? What are the four players you would play in the front court? It's either DeAndre Jordan back into the rotation, which I don't think is a good thing for sustained period of time, or you're talking about Hunter Tyson, you're talking about Justin Holiday, you're talking about maybe moving Michael Porter playing more forward, which wouldn't be the worst thing, but again, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want to be forced to do that. You want the option to do that. Outside of those guys I just named, there's nobody else. So Denver now is in a position where they don't even have options. They're going to be thin to where the guys that are healthy, when everyone's healthy, can complete the roster. But any injury, and all of a sudden you're out of balance.
I have 3 words for you. The 3 words that no Nuggets fan wants to hear. 3 guard lineup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like that's coming. Like there's no way around it really now. And this is why I've continued to say, like, I think that they'll be a different team by the time that they get to the trade deadline. They might be a different team by January, honestly, depending on how this goes. I would say that an important thing for Calvin Booth, and look, Calvin Booth built a championship team. Calvin Booth has been one of the best executives in the league in his early run with the Nuggets. He's proven himself to be adept at both scouting, building, championship habits, the right veterans, and drafting. But I would say that, like, being flexible in terms of being ready to pivot if this thing goes sideways out of the gate, I think is going to be important. There is a tendency amongst media members, and I am absolutely like at the forefront of this. Like, I am one of the most reactionary to be overreactionary. Be like, you got to do something. You got to do something. And the answer is usually like, well, we can probably make it through here and we'll be okay. I don't know that this is that situation. If your guys do not come, if Hunter Tyson, Julian Strother, one of those guys doesn't come into camp and absolutely are like, oh yeah, he's going to be in the rotation. If you don't walk out with being like one of those guys is in the rotation, you've probably got to start looking at whoever is on the market, whether that's like JaMychal Green, who's still unsigned, or whoever else is out there. Like, you better be ready to sign some guys that can play. It's not about what the rotation looks like healthy, because the rotation healthy, I think, is fine. You got everybody, and it's like, it's Reggie, Christian, and Zeke. Okay, cool. 8-man rotation. No problem.
But honestly, like, your top 9 guys, how many games last year do you think the Nuggets had their top 9 guys healthy out of 82?
Is it more than 25?
No, I would doubt it.
Oof.
I mean, I think about 25 games is probably the best case scenario, or most. That's like probably the 70th, 80th percentile for what most teams will have. Again, top 9. Some of these are just like load management or maintenance or what have you, but those things are important throughout the course of the year. Like, oh, he's a little tired, his ankle's not feeling right, let's shut him down. Whereas next year, that's the point. You're going to have to play more than half of your games with one guy down. And again, if we look at the optimistic, and so the pessimistic spin is that Denver is now really thin in their front court. They might have to play a DeAndre Jordan or what have you. The optimistic spin is that maybe you're more inclined to play Aaron Gordon alongside maybe a Jamal Murray in the second unit. So a little bit of a different rotation this year, which again, hasn't been Malone's MO, but I do think it's realistic to think Malone is different this year in that one regard, that he doesn't just do the one player stagger. We'll see. But also maybe it's Michael Porter plays more minutes at the 4, which I think is I think that's his best position, his most impactful position. So maybe he plays a little bit more in that spot. I think those things would be positives for the Nuggets. I just don't want you. I think that's something that you want to have the choice to do, not forced to do.
I really worry about playing Aaron in the stagger. I think you'll wear him out. Like,
well, as long as it's not more minutes, I think. Do you think is that a matter of him playing more minutes?
I don't think it's even about the minutes. I think playing center is taxing on him.
Zeke would have to be the center.
Okay.
This is like a AG Zeke combo lineup.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's ways that they can figure out how to get through it. I think maybe the better thing here is to say that we don't know how they're going to do it, and that's maybe the thing here is like there's not like they'll just do this. Like, it's a concern, and we'll see what it looks like when we get to training camp. Somebody mentioned in the comments Hunter Tyson. I do think that that's like Hunter 6'8", had a fantastic summer league. Like, the opportunity should be there for him to come in and show something. Like, there's an opportunity there, because that's the type of player that they're going to need, is a player like Hunter Tyson. So,
except for Calvin Booth has just talked about him as a small forward. And so coming in rookie year, now you're going to play power forward. I do think he can play both. He's a combo forward, but this is one of those things where it's like, hey, your value, we really like you at the 3, but circumstances, you're just a 4 now. And I think that's probably where he's going to wind up.
Yeah, as Zeke Naji, how that's gone for him. We will, on the other side, we'll talk about entirely different subject. We will get to this question. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world.
I agree.
How long will that be the case? We'll talk about that on the other side when we return here on Locked On Nuggets. First, I need to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Heard that Russell Wilson looked great in the red zone drill on Friday. I heard that was like one of the best practices that he's had. It sounds like he's starting to get a little bit more on track after having some problems with batted balls and interceptions. Sounds like Russ is playing better as camp goes along, which is, I think, what you want to hear. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, including your Denver Broncos, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I've got some division parlays. I like the Seahawks to win the NFC West, and I'm fading a lot of the talk about some of the powerhouse teams. I'm actually got the Titans to win the AFC South as well. I'm not buying all this Jaguars talk. I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves with the Jags. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Adam Mars and Matt Moore together for World's Finest covering all things Nuggets. So Adam, I'm doing my top 100 list. Everybody does this time of year. And I wasn't even going to publish them. I was trying to come up with like a way to evaluate like how to impact them on the spread. And I was just like, I need to have like some sort of evaluation of this. And then my editor action was like, oh, no. We're definitely publishing these. And I was like, I don't really want to, because I have Joel Embiid way lower than people are going to think I should. But the one thing that is clear, so the way that I do it is I rank every player 1 to 5. It's called a Likert scale from my time when I was a psychology student. 1 is least valuable, 5 is most valuable, and you rank them all. And you go through all the 5s, the top tier of guys, and then you go through and you rank all of the 5s 1 through 5. And the only player last year, I think you could have made the argument that Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, or Nikola Jokic. I think you had to take any of those players. I personally would not have included Joel Embiid in that category. I still don't. But I thought any of those 4 players, I thought it was fine to say that they were the best player in basketball on any given night. There is only one now. There is one guy in the top tier. It is just Nikola Jokic. He is the only guy at the top of my tiers. And I think an interesting real question is, one, I think it's important because like I kind of gloss over this. It's like, well, obviously, like everybody's going to have him. That's the thing is the Ringers had him number 1 for a while.
Michael Pina, really big on Jokic.
Really big on Jokic. So is Rob Mahoney. I think most of the lists are going to have Jokic. I think all of the lists are going to have Jokic number 1. You win a championship, and that's what happens. I think it's important to like take a moment, and even though like because we talk so much about not taking Jokic for granted, to be like the best player in the NBA. Now he's an all-time great too, but the best player in the NBA, like without reservation, and in my opinion, undisputably, is a Denver Nugget. And that's amazing and awesome. And it's Nikola Jokic. I think it's important to kind of take that as a moment of appreciation. From there, I did have the kind of question I was thinking. I was like, when's the next time that I'm going to say, yeah, I don't know if it's Jokic or it's definitely not Jokic, it's somebody else. Like thinking about Jokic and how long this prime is going to be as he enters age 29. What is your thought as far as the consensus?
Well, I first want to hear your opinion on this, David Che in the chat, because this is where I was going to go with it. Giannis was never as strong a consensus as Jokic is now. Do you agree with that?
I'm thinking. Yeah, I think I agree with it.
Wow.
And the reason I think I agree with it is, one, there are almost as many critiques of Giannis as there have been of Nikola. I think it's fair to say that some of the critiques of Giannis are a little bit more valid than the ones of Nikola that there were. Like I've downgraded Giannis some based off of like, I've looked at some numbers and just like his jump shot peaked in 2022 or 21 when they won the title, and it's backslid. And like, if you don't have the ability to punish teams, not with a long jumper, I don't need the 3-pointer. I just need the pull up short fadeaway. That's all you need. But when he's not hitting those, he was shooting like 31% on those last year. When you're not hitting those, it does impact your offensive impact. Even though I think he's so awesome at so many great things. The other thing I think is that when Giannis was at his absolute apex for 2021, after he dropped 50 in a closeout game, you could still make the argument like Steph was 2 years younger. KD was 2 years younger. LeBron was 2 years younger. So in the time that has passed between Giannis's peak and now, it's not that Jokic is fortunate in that these other guys have gotten worse, but like, it's just like a timing thing. And I do think that like Steph is not the player that he was 2 years ago. KD is definitely not the guy that he was pre-injury, just in terms of like availability. Right. There are still nights when I'm just like, holy God.
Well, I think KD's tough. Like I've downgraded KD a lot more than most people. But the thing is that Giannis's run to the title, what was different from Jokic's is it was definitive that Jokic was the best player in every series that he played. And that's the series included some of the players that we would be having this conversation. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, namely. And he was the best player definitively against those guys. Giannis was not in the Brooklyn series in that playoff. Like Kevin Durant outplayed him and just barely came up a little bit short. As great as Giannis was, he was by no means bad, but KD was a little bit better. So that's one little difference. But I will say that the reason I thought it was an interesting question is I think that Jokic, his staying power, is the same as Giannis's, meaning when Giannis won, I do think everybody said, okay, that's the guy now. And then you start thinking, how many can he win? Is he good? If you would have asked me this question, or somebody not in Denver this question in 2021, I think most people would have said Giannis is probably going to be the best player for the next 4 or 5 years, and then we'll see what happens with Luka or this or that. But here we are 2 years later, and it's like, no, he's definitively not. Jokic is definitively the best player. So I think the same thing is true of Jokic in that he has an opportunity to be. I think his skill level is good enough, but these things are so hard to know that we have to go up with winning as the like tiebreaker amongst these types of players. So for me, Jokic has to win and keep winning to be able to hold on to that status.
I agree. I think the other challenge is the way to keep winning. Honestly, I don't even necessarily think it's about how they play. It's about the surrounding capability. And a lot of this is, I was watching all of Luka's points and assists to get a feel for, I just need to remind myself of these guys. And there's a couple of possessions where he roasts Embiid. Like he just absolutely torches them, right? But it's like they're tough shots. They're fadeaway shots. And it's just a reminder of how hard it is for any center to guard in space. Like every single center, with the exception of Bam Adebayo, I think and honestly, Kristaps Porzingis to a certain degree really struggles in space. Like, yeah, he's surprisingly good. Kristaps
but surprisingly good is all right. We're starting to get a little. He is not the number 2 best center defending in space.
And so it's really difficult. The Nuggets have done such a great job of building a scheme, a system, and a way of players to where it's like, I just go back to, if you don't force Jokic into those areas where his specific weaknesses show, then it's not big of a problem. He was also really great at the things that he's typically been weak at in these playoffs. Like he's been great at them, but you would probably agree that like if there were roster injuries that allowed for more weaknesses, there is a greater chance of those weaknesses being exacerbated in a series relative to like the Warrior series. Do you agree?
That's so much about basketball, man. Honestly, I think it's the thing that makes basketball difficult is Denver was swept or lost in 5 last year. Then they won the title this year. I mean, it's, like both things are possible. Denver this year had the right pieces, and Jokic's skill set in particular, like Steph Curry, Jokic's skill set was allowed to fully shine. It doesn't diminish him to say that in any way. It's just to say that, hey, basketball is a team sport, and individual greatness only carries you so far. And a team that, can augment those great traits, that's helpful. I just think that Jokic now, one, the Nuggets have the team to do that. And then on top of that, Jokic did reach a level in this last year, in this last playoff run that was all, I mean, he touched the heavens, right? Like he was that great. I went back actually this weekend, Matt, for the first time. I went back and watched the Lakers series.
Oh, I'm so happy that you got to do this.
I know. I watched game 1 and I watched part of game 3, but game 1, it was so great to watch. Like it really was. It might be, honestly, that game is probably like a top 10 game ever played. I know that might be crazy to say, but it really was.
I don't think so.
That dominant against great teams or great players, great individual defense and what have you. And he still was that dominant and that perfect. I don't know. I only say that to say, I don't want people to be disappointed when halfway through the year next year, it becomes a question about who the actual greatest is again. We're going to have it. The thing is if Jokic wins, he will be definitive again. And even if he just wins like every other year, I think he'll hold on to that title. But if he loses a couple, it'll be the same as Giannis. If he loses next year and the year after, despite being just as dominant as he has been individually, and nobody else really rising above that, it'll no longer be consensus. In fact, I would guess that somebody would have passed him in the public opinion.
It's interesting because I'm not sure who that's going to be.
So let's throw him out there because I think this is the fun thing. There's a chance it's Embiid, although Embiid's older than people realize, and I don't think he has that long of staying power. But if there's a chance that,
look, I'll say I just don't think he's good enough. I'm just going to go ahead and go out with it. I just don't think he's good enough. Like, learn how to handle a double team 8 years in. How about you do that, and then we can talk about whether he's the best player on the planet.
You know what? I'm more or less with you. Giannis has a chance again. You win again. Like if Giannis only has to win one. If Giannis wins next year, then it's like he's back, right? He gets the spot. I think Steph Curry and LeBron, I think it would be hard to make that argument. They could surprise us, but I think it would be hard. You've got Luka coming up, who
That's
I
the
think
one.
is a guy
That's the one.
that can take it. I'm not sure who else is like really waiting in the wings though. Is there other like big name you're thinking of? Jason Tatum, I don't see it.
Here's one. It's an injury thing, right?
Okay.
Clippers stay healthy. They win the title. Quiet age 33. If he's finals MVP.
I just don't know if it's consensus. I mean, he would have 3 titles. That would be a big deal. But Jokic outplayed him like head to head in a way that was pretty definitive.
Yeah, but and people really forget that one. Like that's Nuggets fans don't, but I think the consensus really kind of like the
Kawhi's
bubble
on the list.
The bubble kind of like fades as we get further away from it. People were like, "Oh wow, Donovan!" Like people are still kind of like I brought up Donovan Mitchell the other day. Like, why is Donovan Mitchell being compared with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? I forget the other one that I compared. Book, and I was like, Donovan's amazing. Like Donovan had a 50-point game in the playoffs. Like Donovan Mitchell's awesome. Like he's really good and he's still extremely young. Like what are we doing? And it's because like there is kind of this like distortion, I think, as time goes on. Steph's a hard one just because like Steph's 35. Like he's gonna be 36 next year. You know, can the best player in the league be 36? Because I don't think LeBron was the best player in the league when he was 36. And if LeBron can't do it at age 36, could Steph do it? And I don't necessarily think that that's possible.
Yeah, but both of them could do it. Like I just, and if they do it, I mean, you might like if LeBron would have won last year, people would have been like still the best. It just would have happened. So if they win next year, like that conversation will just happen.
You want
staying power.
I don't think he's
at the end.
I don't think that it's like. I would be very curious if the Lakers won the title next year and AD finally was the best player on the team and finally won Finals MVP, because everybody wants to anoint AD, like they just want to. Like when I was watching, I did the Jokic clips the same as I did Luka, and I was just guffawing as Jokic just moved through AD like water. Like there's just nothing there. But everybody wants to anoint AD. So I feel like if AD were to win the
title. There's no way. AD's not going to get this title. It's not happening, man.
You just don't believe it. Okay.
It's just also too inconsistent. Like greatest player, he's already ruined that. He would have to have like 3 years in a row of doing this before people would give it to him. Giannis hasn't had a down year. Jokic hasn't had a down year. LeBron in his peak didn't have a down year. Yeah. AD's had several down years. That just doesn't happen to greatest player alive. I don't know if it ever has. I think the list is very short. LeBron and Steph could capture it for 1 year, maybe 2, but I think that window's closing. Luka coming up on it, Giannis, maybe Embiid for a year or 2. Again, I think the window's closing, and I'm with you. I don't buy it. And then outside of that, I think it actually gets kind of hard.
I got two names. I got 2 names for you.
Let me hear them.
If the Celtics are good enough to get the 1 seed, Tatum is better, and they win the title. Like, does Tatum at least get to that level?
I don't think Tatum is 1 year away from that conversation.
If he gets a multi-year, that makes sense.
I think he might be a year and a half.
Yeah. He's still at 25. The other question
he's young enough, yeah.
The other one I have for you, and this is pretty easy, is just like Damian Lillard goes to Miami. They tear through the Eastern Conference. The West beats itself up, and the Heat win the title with Jimmy Butler winning Finals MVP. Is it Jimmy?
No.
Because everybody loves playoff Jimmy.
Yeah, but I don't think he gets best player in the world. I don't think.
I do think it's tough if he doesn't beat Jokic and Jokic is beating him. I think that's one of the problems with like AD is too. There's going to be like a, you know.
I do think that like peak powers is how I would do this, but at the same time, we are talking about just like default who's the best, and Jimmy doesn't touch these other guys in the regular season. It matters less, but it still matters. And then hold on, I want to go through just like then you have the young pups.
Yeah.
You know, like an Anthony Edwards, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, Zion becomes increasingly difficult to like imagine or what have you.
Hallie is actually one I want to put on the list.
Halliburton?
Yeah.
Oh, great player, but I would be shocked if he's ever close to best player.
I'll tell you, like, after doing all the film on him, like, leads the league in assists with incredible efficiency, and he's still, like, he's so young that there's, like, if I project out, if we talk about the ways that you and I talk about, where it's, like, they control the game, and they're able to impact the game in ways that aren't just, like, wow, he scored a lot of points. Like, Hallie, I think, has that capability. He shapes the game more than most point guards that I see.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, he's more like a Jason Kidd. Was Jason Kidd ever considered the best player in the NBA? I think
he was in that.
I think he was in the conversation on the fringes of it, though. I just think that there was always a default player or two that were.
Yeah, I'm trying to find guys that could be within the range, right? But it's just like the answer. But that's what's kind of interesting about this is that the ultimate answer is probably no, which leads you to the question of, especially with the big gap jump, because we talk about LeBron, Jimmy, Steph, right? All of these guys over 33 years old, like they're getting up there, and then there's Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. And then there's a huge drop down to like 25. And typically guys that are 25 can't do it. Like Luka's the exception to all of this because he's so good at such a young age. Right.
Right.
Luka's like the only kind of guy I think that can take it. And other than that, it's like, it really genuinely is a question of, do you think, because to me, this does become like a simple two, if we're doing like a flow chart, it's, do you think Giannis or Jokic or Embiid will pass Jokic in the next 3 years?
Honestly,
no.
Honestly, I think the next 3 years it's going to be Giannis, Jokic, or Luka. I actually think all these other guys are very unlikely to hang on to that title and very unlikely to catch up to that stratosphere. Yeah. So I think it's those three guys. But if you just go back real quick, just to put a fine point on this, if you go back 20 years, Matt, how many best players – actually, stop at 2020, 2000 to 2020. How many best players in the world did we have? I would bet it was only 4 or 5 because you had – Shaq, then you had Tim Duncan / Kobe. You know, there was a moment in time when you could do like the McGrady, you could make a case. Like there was a short window where it was a little volatile, but then it was, a Duncan or Kobe. Then it was LeBron for a decade, and then it was Steph. And I don't think that there's anybody else in there. Maybe KD, but I think it's played out. I think Steph deserved like retroactively 2017-18 to be credited there. So to me, there's not that many. There's these little windows at the end of somebody's prime. Right now, it's the end of LeBron. He's held that mantle for a while, where it went back and forth between a Giannis and now a Jokic or something. But usually, once somebody establishes it, they own it for a while.
Yeah, I think one of these things is that, like, it's an interesting question of after the 2011 season, the question of like, who's the best basketball player in the world, right? Because like I think a lot of people would have said like it's Dirk. He just won the title. Look what he did. Look at that playoff run. Look how incredible that was. But a lot of people have been like it's still LeBron. Like no matter even with that flame out, the overall body of work, it's been LeBron since 2008. Right.
That was a 1 year thing. Like 2011 was especially unique, but
right. Which is like that's what I think is kind of interesting about this because I would say 2017 was the singular moment when Kevin Durant was the best player in the world. Like
I just don't know if he was.
I know. I think he was like he really was like being at those finals. He was unbelievable. He didn't. I get it because it's like you just couldn't judge him. That's what's so frustrating.
That's what I mean. That's all I mean. And every year other than those, he hasn't been that guy.
Yeah, I agree.
But he was that guy in the moment when he couldn't lose.
I agree. Who was the best player in the world in 18? Steph?
I think so.
And 19 was Giannis.
19 was like the injury year, so you could say it was You could say it was either Giannis, Kawhi. I mean, this is what I mean about there's these transitionary periods, and where it's like a little volatile, but there's these long gaps or long periods where it's usually one guy.
Let's assume the money is enough to keep Jokic playing. This segment's gone long, but I think it's been a really good discussion. Let's say the money's enough to keep Jokic playing. How long do you think he can stay at the top? Like, what is the if he doesn't retire, what's the point where you think he will no longer like that? You think that he wouldn't be able to be the best player?
Offense 40, defense 34, 30, probably 34. You start to see like a meaningful drop where it's like it's already difficult, but like, okay, how do we really cover for this guy now?
So
34 to 40, I still think you're an incredibly impactful player. It's just like your defense now is tough.
So what's interesting about that is what that means is unless you think that Jamal or MPJ can get so good that they become Mikhail to help Bird, like that's the level you got to get to, then that means the Nuggets have a 5-year window, which is a great window.
Yeah, it's a huge window.
I just
don't think you can't see farther down the line than 5 years though anyway. So
it's true. And he probably retires in 4. So, but Like
I don't know. I'm starting to think he doesn't, but we'll see.
In general. On the other side, we will continue our series where we pick two players and kind of debate the merits of each. We'll talk about that as we do Reggie Jackson versus Jalen Pickett in a backup point guard battle. We'll do that on the other side when we return on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Anoop Bain says 40? Another 12 years of Yoke?
I'm just saying, offensively, I think 38-year-old Jokic is like still pretty good. I don't know what part is slowed down of him offensively, physically.
A good way to I honestly think that a good comp here, because he's thrown out because he's the only one that American writers have any sort of perspective of, is Arvydas. Arvydas had a good, he played 61 games at 21 minutes a game all the way through 01. That was 6 full seasons till he was 36, right? And so if you take Arvydas and you think about how much better Nikola is than Arvydas was, then you really have kind of like a comp of 38, 738, he could still be a hugely impactful player.
Also, modern science and nutrition and all these things. Like Arvydas Sabonis was in Soviet Russia, Lithuania. Mm-hmm. He wasn't exactly getting prime treatment and taking care of his body in the best ways throughout his career.
Look, I have Steph Curry as in tier 2 with Giannis, and he is 36. At 36, even 10 years ago, I would have been get the body bag. It's over. He's done. Right?
Steph is 36.
Yeah.
That's really surprising to me.
Isn't it crazy? It's really surprising. He was 35 last season. He turns 36. He'll be 36 when the playoffs begin next season.
I think the Warriors, man.
I know.
I'm counting the Warriors out, man.
I know
it's dumb to do, but I'm doing it.
I'm concerned about them too. All right, so we're gonna continue our series here. We pick two players and kind of debate the merits. This isn't you got to keep one. This isn't vying for the same minutes. This one kind of is. But I do think this one is one that it's predictable, but I think it's one that we should have. And it is the official Adam Mares player of 2023-24, Jalen Pickett versus Adam has predicted that eventually I will wind up defending Reggie Jackson. I am sworn not to do so. I have some evidence to try and present the devil's advocate side of this today. Okay. So that this isn't a 3-second segment on that should be Jalen. But talking about the differences between the two players and who gets minutes and who doesn't. What are your thoughts on Jalen versus Reggie?
Well, I've said this already that I think the odds of Jalen overtaking Reggie throughout the course of the year are pretty low. I just think it's hard. And it's Summer League. You saw how difficult it is to just build something around Jalen Pickett. He's such a unique player. You need a lot of buy-in. And rookies, just how many times does a team mold to their rookie? It's very, very rare, especially a championship caliber team. So I think the deck is a little bit stacked against him. And then the other part of this is, we always think about the offense because that's just how we analyze players. What are they going to be able to do? But to me, the bigger question for me on Jalen is defense. I think he's a phenomenal team defender. I think he's smart. I think he's going to be there. I don't think he's going to be in trouble a lot from Malone, which is how you get benched. But the one thing is, he's not very quick, and especially in pick and roll, his height you really notice. So I worry that he's a player that teams are going to be able to put in pick and roll. And again, maybe this won't be such a regular season problem, but I do wonder, coaches will see it and be like, man, this concerns us for the playoffs. Teams are going to know exactly how to go at him in a way that's hey, completely mitigates any defensive strengths he has. So for that one reason, I just look at it and I think the deck is pretty stacked against him, even if I think skill set wise, he outpaces Reggie in a lot of different areas.
Thomas almost made me crack up during your speech where he said, by God, it's Colin Gillespie with a steel chair.
Goodness.
That was really good. By God, Kang. So what's interesting is I went back and I looked at Reggie's Clipper data. And I want to kind of get a
Clipper debut?
Data, the numbers.
Oh, okay.
And I want to get a sense for what he was there, because I just think that it's a problem because he was brought on the Nuggets to be something closer to what the idea of him is versus what he was with the Clippers. And the reality is he's still probably more valuable to Denver, closer to what he was with the Clippers. And what I mean by that is Reggie was 32nd percentile. That's bad, by the way, running pick and roll. Like, he's not a good pick and roll point guard. He's not able to get clearance. He's not able to create space. And bear in mind, that's with Zubac, who I used to not be very high on, and he has grown on me as he's gotten older and better. And I think Zu's like a perfect, like, you should be able to generate pretty good looks with the amount of shooting the Clippers had with Zu screening for you. Like, that's a pretty basic thing that you should be able to generate some pretty good offense out of. And Reggie could not do that. Like, Reggie really struggled in that regard. However, as a spot up weapon, how about this number? 43% on no dribble jumpers coming out spot up. Like, that's like an area where, okay, like, and the numbers are kind of similar for him coming off screens, which is effectively like, he was pretty good as like a shooter. And you saw that with Denver a little bit, where I don't remember what situation it was. There was one in the regular season, and I think one in the playoffs, where like he made shots, and it was like, oh, Reggie made shots. And like, that's what, and I remember you being annoyed because you're like, the only reason we're saying he had a good game is he made shots. And like, that may be the reality of him. And the problem there is that, leading kind of back into what you're talking about with the skill set, is like, Denver doesn't need another shooter. Like,
they might off that bench though.
Yeah,
I mean,
if Christian struggles again.
I mean, look, it would be weird if the answer, what you're almost getting at here is you're working through this thought out loud. Maybe it's both.
Both. Yeah.
Especially now with no Vlatko, maybe your bench is Pickett, Reggie, off ball, Christian, Peyton, and Zeke. Unconventional. But I mean, that's a 5-man, 5 bench players. Or maybe it's just Jamal Murray, right? Maybe it's Jamal Murray and Reggie Jackson off ball. I mean,
I want to touch on this real quick. John Coleman says, did Reggie struggle, or was he not interested in giving the ball to others? I don't think that Reggie Jackson is like a spectacular or overly unselfish player. Okay. What I want to say is, sometimes, as somebody who's very critical whenever you're a black hole, like, if you just possess the ball and you pound it into oblivion, I get really annoyed. Like, I just hate watching it. And it's like, you're actively hurting. Like, the ball finds energy, right? You're killing the energy for your team. And all these guys that are working their ass on defense, you're taking away from their ability to contribute and to help you win, as well as contribute to their careers, because you want to dribble, score. That's why I never liked Melo. So with this regard, what I will say is, sometimes I've noticed that we tend to ascribe that attribute to guys that just aren't good at it.
Right.
Like, he is a selfish player. No, he's just worried about turning the ball over.
No, I don't even think it's that. Like, his skill set is scoring. That's his skill set. So the difficulty is, the position is point guard. So, and it's a second unit where, if you're not setting up Christian Brown, is he going to score? If you're not setting up Peyton Watson, is he going to score? If you're not setting up Zeke Naji, is he going to score? So Reggie Jackson's best skill is scoring. His lesser skill is setting people up. And you got a roster of guys that probably are going to need that. To move it over. So that's Reggie. I think Reggie's kind of well known. If he has a good year this year, it's because he shot well in the ways that he has shot well before. You know, like, he's created something out of nothing enough times in the half court, and maybe that second unit plays defense well enough to get out in transition to score the other times.
And defended really well coming up.
And he defends really well. And exactly. And he plays like a veteran on the defensive end. For Pickett, and I'm sitting here thinking this. Here's the thing. Monte Morris was smaller than Pickett. He was maybe a little bit longer, although not really. I mean, I've stood next to both of them. The wingspan and stuff almost doesn't matter when you're that small or whatever. So they're about the same size. And Monte Morris, as a regular season player, and even mostly in the playoffs, his size wasn't an issue. He knew how to use it. I think Pickett will probably be that. So then it's just a question of, can all of his other skills translate? I really like him. I hope he gets a shot. I'm very optimistic about what he could be. I'm just not very optimistic about what opportunity he's going to get this year. I think he's a guy that I would not blame Malone, at least at this moment. I don't think we're going to be blaming him too much if he's not playing, unless Reggie's an absolute disaster. But it would be understandable if Pickett didn't play a lot right out of the package.
Do you know why Monte was smaller than Jalen?
You know, they go to, booty ball, and, it's really, really hard to guard.
Really, really hard to guard.
So, I love that we have drops. We got to get some video of Nuggets drop stat on here. So, with that said, I agree with you. Look, a lot of this is, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, we try and give you the idea of not just what should happen, but the political realities of an NBA team, right? Malone's trying to repeat as champion, and he's trying to win as many games as possible around Nikola. And it's very hard to be like, we're going to take time to try and I will say, I think talking to some people in the league, people paid attention to what happened with Golden State. Like there's a little bit of like the 2 timelines thing is getting too cute and gets you in trouble. Like you could be in, and that the problem I think is that Denver has in part by choice, in part because of the CBA being forced into it. And the realities of just the money that their starters make. Like Denver has gone a route of there's no alternative. You have to develop the young guys because like Jalen's going to have to play. There's no one else. Like there's no, unless you're going to run Justin Holiday at point. And I don't think anybody has, I don't think he was brought in for that purpose. So like if Jamal needs to miss a game, a game, Jalen has to play.
I mean, I think he'll play in those spots, just to be clear. The question is, I mean, Zeke Naji played in those spots too, but we wouldn't say he played last year. Like he was still on the outside looking in. I think there's an opportunity there for Jalen. I will say this. Jalen Pickett, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson. I like that as a 1-2-3. Zeke Naji, now you're 5. Okay. Is Michael Porter the smartest stagger if that's your combo? And could this be – last year I predicted, Matt, that Bones Highland would unlock Michael Porter Jr. And by the way, those two guys were friends. You know, Michael Porter the most vocal about, hey, Bones was a really talented player after he left. Didn't happen. Clearly I was wrong on that prediction. But could Jalen Pickett be that guy where it's like, okay, we have all of our slashers and cutters, but if you're Jalen Pickett playing the Jokic role, who's your number one target between Zeke Naji, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Michael Porter? Clearly Michael Porter's number one target there. So maybe there's a world in which that's actually becomes the stagger in a way that allows Michael Porter to be the best scorer of the bench, but not the facilitator, which is something he's never proven capable of doing.
You know what I worry about in those situations? I actually worry about shot volume, not efficiency. I worry about volume because I feel like one of the things that happens is like, the Nuggets have really good shot discipline. Like they're always working for a better shot. And I think that hurts them sometimes with Zeke Naji. I'm like, don't think about it. Just fire, man. Like you just got to get these shots up. That's going to have to be a growth area for Christian. I will say the video of MPJ with Isaiah Thomas, like he looks
more athletic.
Awesome. I actually, and I'll say this, usually I disagree with his style choices as somebody who's clearly very stylish.
Yeah.
But the dark blonde dye with the
I didn't
beard,
even notice. Yeah.
I was like,
you like it?
you look like a man. Like you look, you don't look like a member of One Direction. Like this is good. I like this. So
or styling the players.
But yeah, I think you're right in that there's a way to do this.
One more thing real quick. Yeah. His favorite target, Pickett's favorite target in college is a guy who's on the Nuggets' training camp roster, Andrew Funk, who was kind of like Porter. I mean, he's the Penn State version of Porter, and that his best skill was just firing really quickly. Elite shooter, but they had a bunch of two-man actions. Like Pickett knows how to play off of a Michael Porter type player. It's his favorite type of player, it seems, to play off of. So there is a world in which Pickett and Porter have a really nice chemistry, and all those other guys are great defenders and are just great cutters and continuity offense guys, which you need to keep the ball moving.
John says, I would worry the MPJ feels like he needs to, quote, run the offense during a stagger. I disagree. You want him to. Like, he needs to learn how to do that.
You think you want him to?
I want him to. I want him to. He needs to, like, he is good enough to develop that part of his game. Like, I don't think he's capped. I think that there's still more.
So when you say creating, did you say facilitating or creating?
Running the offense.
Yeah, you said running. See, I'll just break that up. I think he can create more and be more aggressive in those ways. I just don't think he's a passer. I don't think he's a facilitator.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying I want him to be the engine of the offense. I'm saying that I guess, yeah, you're right. I don't want him to run the offense.
Right.
But I want him to have opportunities where he gets to make decisions on what happens. Shot creation.
Yep. And also just turn the scale up and double basically when you're with the bench of now you get to attack. You're not fully open, but see what happens with a couple dribbles going this way or that way. And I think that's right.
Every summer, you and I are like, how are we going to fill these shows? What are we going to do in the off season?
Turns out we can just talk Nuggets.
50 minutes in to this episode of Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Enjoy your week. Adam will be back with you with a solo show on Wednesday. You can catch friends of the show Friday with me on Fridays. Until then, make sure to keep it tuned to Locked On Nuggets. You find us on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets. You can catch Adam Mares on Twitter at Adam_Mara. Check out the DNVR show on the daily. You can follow me on Twitter at HB Basketball as I go through more of my top 100 listing, because who doesn't get tired of that content in the summer? We'll see you guys again next time on Locked